Leon used to think that his life was a stable haven. It seemed to him that 14 years of marriage with Emma had passed without cracks, without secrets. But everything changed in a moment, almost by accident, like a bolt from the blue. When he was looking for her passport in a drawer and suddenly found something that burned his mind like a talk. 2 tickets to the Maldives. He froze for a second, staring at the names as if he couldn't believe his own eyes. Emma Brooks and Adam Fisher. Who is Adam? Why is the ticket in my name, but in his? Why are there no hints or conversations? The echoing silence of the apartment suddenly became unbearable, and the air was too heavy. Leon sat on the edge of the bed, holding the tickets in his hands, and his thoughts went into the darkness, where fears and suspicions lived. She's cheating on him. Must be. There are no other explanations. But instead of exploding and setting up an interrogation on the spot, Leon decided to do something else. He stood up, exhaled, and decided, I'll find out the whole truth. The first impulse is to dial Emma, to ask how she could, but he held on. Her lie, if it was a lie, required proof. She doesn't deserve to get away with it. Just the facts, only the truth. Over the next few days, Leon noticed how all their usual conversations took on a strange falseness. When she talked about meetings with colleagues, he looked at her with a new sharpness, like a detective interrogating a suspect. Her every gesture, every movement became suspicious. She stayed late at work, talked about urgent projects, but her eyes, when she looked at him, were a little more wary than before. And so one evening, when Emma, as always, announced that she was leaving for a meeting with the girls from the office, Leon made a move. He took out her phone, which she had left on the kitchen counter, and connected a tracking app to it. It instantly transmitted all the data to him. Routes, calls, messages. Leon felt anxiety creeping into him like poison, gradually paralyzing his mind. The days seemed longer than usual, the nights restless and full of obsessive thoughts. The surveillance app he installed on Emma's phone became his only clue to the truth hidden under the mask of their ordinary life. He couldn't take his eyes off the screen. The map showed her movements in real time. But where there should have been meetings with colleagues and office events, restaurants, luxury hotels, and quiet areas that she never mentioned popped up. Every discrepancy pricked him from the inside like a rusty needle. One evening she said, "Tonight's dinner with Carol and the other girls from the office. Don't expect me early." He smiled and nodded, like a man who still believes in illusions. But inside, everything was shaking with anger. Her words were too perfect, and her smile was a little unnatural. Leon understood. She's lying. He waited until the door closed behind her and immediately checked the app. Her phone was moving, but not towards the restaurant where she was supposedly meeting with her friends. Instead, he saw a route leading to a luxury hotel in the city center. Your time is up, he thought, clutching the phone so that his fingers turned white. The inner voice left no doubt anymore. She's hiding something. But what? And who is this mysterious Adam? He put on his jacket, left the house, and got into the car. The cold October wind was beating against the windows, but he hardly noticed it. All his attention was focused on the map and the small green that indicating its location. She was on her way to the very hotel where she had been several times in recent weeks. It couldn't be a coincidence. He drove up to the building and stopped in the shade, under a street lamp that was flashing as if warning of what was coming. The parking lot was almost empty except for a few cars. He noticed her car in the far corner. Her white sedan glittered like a knife stuck in his soul. He didn't come out right away. Instead, he sat nervously tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, peering into every detail. The waiting was exhausting, but he knew the truth was worth the wait. And then, a few minutes later, he saw her. She didn't get out of the car alone. A man appeared from the passenger door. Tall, confident, with carelessly styled hair and a smile that came too easily. It was the same Adam. Leon recognized him from a photo he had found on social media when he was looking for information about the ticket holder. Their gestures were more than friendly. She touched his hand, laughing at something, and he ran a finger down her cheek. It was an intimate touch, filled with something she and Leon hadn't had in a long time. His chest tightened, and anger burned his heart. But he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stay where he was. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "It's not the time yet." They walked into the hotel lobby without looking back. The smiles on their faces were carefree, like teenagers enjoying a forbidden romance. Leon knew he shouldn't lose control. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to wait a few minutes before getting out of the car. He followed them into the hotel, trying to keep a low profile. The interior smelled of expensive coffee and leather, and the music was playing unobtrusively. Leon slipped into the shadow of the pillars and stood in the corner, watching the couple climb the stairs to the second floor. He took out his phone and started recording everything on video. Every touch, every look, it was all proof. She's not going to get away with it this time. The next day, when Emma said that after work she would have dinner with colleagues again, kissed him on the cheek goodbye, and walked out the door. Her perfume left a sweet trail in the air, but Leon could feel the bitterness. Another lie. Her deception had become routine, too practiced and flawless. But now she's going to get caught. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, Leon left the house, got into his own, and launched a surveillance application. The green at that marked location was moving confidently through the city, but it was not heading towards the restaurant where she promised to be. No, Emma was heading downtown to the Plaza Hotel. Hotel. It's him again. Leon accelerated through the evening traffic. The engine of his car was humming like his own heart, fast and relentless. By the time he reached the plaza, the evening sky over the city had already begun to darken, and the neon lights of the signs gave the street an ominous glow. She was here. He felt it, and then he saw her with him. A tall man with a light, confident gait walked next to Emma. She looked at him the way she had once looked at Leon, with adoration and trust. They were holding hands, her fingers snugly entwined with his. And then she laughed, not just softly but sincerely, like a person who has forgotten about everything in the world. That laugh went right through Leon. Not anger, not jealousy, but a rupture in his soul, as if she had torn something alive out of him. But he continued to watch, clenching his teeth so that his jaw ached. He took out his phone and started filming. The camera captured every detail, their closeness, the way he gently touched her shoulder, and how she let him do it without looking back, without thinking. It seemed that the world froze and time stopped, turning every second into torture. But Leon did not take the camera away, did not allow himself to flinch. He needs proof. Impartial, cold facts. This is the only way he will break this web of lies once and for all. They entered the hotel, and Leon, keeping his distance, followed. The lobby was luxurious, like everything in this place. Marble floor, soft light from chandeliers, aromas of coffee, and expensive perfumes. He felt out of place, a stranger in this world. But it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was exposure. Emma and her lover walked up to the front desk. Leon stopped in the shadow of a pillar, continuing to write. He saw them exchange glances that were too deep, too warm to be explained by work or friendship. The receptionist gave them a key card, and they headed for the elevator. Leon followed, trying to keep a low profile. The anger inside him was icy cold. He felt no fear, no pain, just a cold-blooded, quiet decision. It's all over today. They went up to the fourth floor. The elevator doors opened, and Leon noticed out of the corner of his eye how they went to one of the rooms at the end of the corridor. The doors slammed shut, cutting them off from the rest of the world. Leon stood in the dimness of the hallway, holding a phone with a recorded video in his hand. He had enough evidence. Emma won't be able to lie anymore. But looking at the closed door, he realized that this was not enough for him. He wanted to see everything with his own eyes. He wanted to know how far their relationship had gone. Leon went quietly to the door and pressed his ear to the panel. He thought he heard muffled voices and then a short laugh. Her laughter again, a laugh that once belonged to him. Now that sound was for another man. Leon gritted his teeth, trying to control the wave of despair that swept over him. Thoughts began to sound in my head now. Right now. Open the door, and it's over. He was one step away from knocking. But instead he backed off. No, he should be smarter. He will do it on his own terms. Back in the car, Leon reviewed the recording. With every second that he played the video, the anger inside him grew, turning into an icy calm. Emma didn't know that she had already been exposed. And that was his advantage. Tickets, he whispered to himself. Maldives. A plan began to form in his mind. He imagined meeting her at home, putting her in front of the facts. In this new scenario, he was not a puppet, but a director. She will find out the truth at the most inopportune moment, when it will be too late to fix something. Something had changed inside him. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. It doesn't matter how their story ends. He has already won. A new day starts tomorrow, and there will be no place for lies in this day. Leon returned home earlier than usual. There was no anger or pain inside him, only a strange feeling of liberation, like a pilot who decided to eject a second before the crash. He put 2 suitcases by the door, checked their position, carefully, without haste. Emma will understand everything at a glance. He walked around the living room, figuring out how the evening would go. There are no screams, no scenes, only the truth, cold and unforgiving, like the blade he had been sharpening inside himself for the past few days. Everything will be resolved in a matter of minutes. Soon he heard the brakes of her car squeak in the driveway. Leon sat down in an armchair, tilted his head, and looked at the door. He had been waiting for this moment. Emma came in, a tired but on-duty smile on her face. There is a feigned relief in her eyes, as if she has returned to a place where she was desired and loved. But this house was no longer her refuge. Her gaze caught on the suitcases. Confusion flickered in the smile, then alarm. Leon, what's happening? She frowned as she took off her coat. What about the suitcases? He didn't answer. I just reached for my phone and turned on the video. The very moment she held Adam's hand outside the hotel. Their laughter, their touch, everything is ruthlessly recorded on the screen. Every second of this video was a verdict. Emma froze. Her face turned as pale as chalk. In that short silence, her world collapsed. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words stuck somewhere in her throat. The tickets to the Maldives are yours, Leon said calmly. You can go with him. His voice sounded frighteningly flat, as if he was announcing a weather forecast. Emma gasped, took a step toward him, held out her hand as if she could stop what was already inevitable. Her eyes filled with tears. Leon, listen to me. It's not what you think. I can explain. Please give me a chance. He didn't react. Her words were empty, like an echo in an empty house. Nothing she could say mattered. Not now. Not after he saw it with his own eyes. I made a mistake, she said, sobbing, trying to find his gaze. I'm confused. It was a weakness. Leon, I love you. Please don't do this. Leon was silent. He looked at her with an icy calmness that frightened her more than any screams. There was no anger in his gaze anymore, just a final goodbye. It's all done, he said softly, getting up from his chair. I don't want to hear any more lies. Her crying got louder. She almost fell at his feet, trying to hold his hand. But he gently removed her fingers. At that moment, he felt only relief. You can go with him, Emma. His voice was soft, but indifferent. You've already made your choice. Emma was sobbing, and he stood beside her like a motionless shadow. He knew that these were not tears of remorse. They were tears of fear that everything was really over. She always believed that she could manage the situation, that any lie could be solved. But this time was different. This was the last time. She was whispering desperately. Please don't do this. Give me a chance to fix it. I'll explain everything. But her voice was drowned in silence, like a stone in dark water. Leon turned to the door and picked up her suitcases. His movement was clear and decisive, like a hammer blow. I've already given you enough chances, he said, opening the door. Now it's your turn to move on. He put the suitcases outside the door and stepped back, leaving the door open. It was symbolic. The door to their past was open, but there was no way there anymore. Emma stood in the middle of the room, broken, trembling, like a man who was thrown into the cold ocean without a lifeline. But Leon wasn't going to save her. Goodbye, Emma, he said, meeting her gaze for the last time. I hope your choice was worth it." And with that, he stepped out the door, leaving her in an empty house full of shadows of their past. The divorce passed without scandals and unnecessary words, like a storm that swept away everything it could and left, leaving a clear horizon. The signatures on the documents became the last point, and a few weeks later Leon was already standing in front of the door of the law office, holding in his hands a certified copy of the divorce certificate. He expected to feel emptiness or pain, but instead, calmness spread through his soul, as if everything inside finally fell into place. With this document, his freedom took shape and meaning. He went outside, breathing in the cool morning air. Autumn was in full swing. The wind fluttered the leaves, carrying them away, as a reminder that everything that ages and outlives its own must be let go. He was ready to let go, too, not just Emma, but the weight that had been dragging him down for the last few months. The past no longer held him back. Leon got into the car and looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man he saw was different. Not those who believed in unconditional devotion, who were ready to forgive lies and turn a blind eye to omissions. This man has become stronger. There was a confidence in his eyes that he had long lost, or perhaps never had. He no longer needed other people's explanations and did not look for excuses for other people's actions. The pain was gone, dissolved in the determination to move on without looking back. It wasn't deliverance, it was rebirth. He realized that he had not only broken off the marriage, he tore up an old version of himself. But life did not wait for him to fully realize the changes. She had already given him new opportunities. There was a message on the phone from his old friend, whom they had been planning to meet for a long time, drinking coffee and discussing life plans. "How did you like Saturday morning?" a friend wrote. Leon smiled. A simple suggestion, but there was a taste of something new in those words, a promise that what he had long dreamed of was ahead of him, even if he did not know it himself. He answered, made an appointment, and then put the phone on the passenger seat. There was a swarm of thoughts in his head, but this time they didn't pull him into the darkness. These were thoughts about the future, free and full of possibilities. He turned on the music he hadn't listened to in a long time. The song that used to be the background melody of their marriage now sounded different. No bitterness, no regrets. The music just filled the salon like a new breath, and Leon felt a smile spread across his face by itself. His future began here and now. On the way home, he stopped at a cafe and got himself a cappuccino with cinnamon, as he liked but rarely allowed. He finally began to understand that small joys are not a waste of time, but the basis of life. He walked down the street and felt that he was getting lighter with every step. The wind seemed to be carrying away the remnants of the past, freeing him from what had once seemed insoluble. "This is life," he whispered to himself, looking at the clouds slowly floating across the sky. A life he hasn't lived yet. The past no longer dictated conditions to him. Emma was a choice he had made in the past. Now he had new elections, and this time they would be his alone. Some might say that divorce is the end, but Leon did not see this as the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. And there was no more room for fear and doubt in this chapter. He became the main character of his life, not an extra in someone's drama. Leon returned home and sat down on the sofa that he once shared with Emma, but now this sofa was only his. He looked at the window, where the warm light of the autumn sun flooded the room, and suddenly realized that he felt not loneliness, but freedom. He didn't need to make excuses anymore. He no longer needed to hold on to something that had long since lost its meaning. "Life is just beginning," he said aloud to himself, and his voice was full of determination. These words were not just a consolation. It was a promise. And that's where we come to the end of our story today. If you liked this story and aroused your emotions, please support us with likes and share your impressions in the comments. Your reactions help our stories spread through algorithms. If this is your first time on our channel, join our community by clicking on the subscribe button. This inspires us to create new, interesting stories for you. Thank you for watching the video. to the very end. We are waiting for you in the next issue.